Welcome to the Soul Session with Samira Seraphini. You landed here for a reason. You're ready to heal your heart, embody authentic confidence, and soften into your feminine energy. It's time to live in true alignment and manifest a blissful life. Let's begin. Hello and welcome. This is the Soul Session podcast. I'm Samira Seraphini, intuitive therapist and creator of the Soul Method. Heal, align, and manifest. If you're new here, welcome. This space was made for you. And if you've been here before, thank you for coming back. Today, we're going into one of the patterns I see most often in the women I work with. The one that shows up in every relationship, no matter how much inner work has already been done. This episode is called You Don't Need to Trust Him to Feel Secure. Heal Anxious Attachment at the Root. And I want to open with something honest. You are not trying to understand him. You are trying to calm yourself through him. If that landed somewhere in your body, this episode is for you. Let me ask you something. Do you find yourself analyzing your relationship constantly? Going over the same situations, the same conversations, searching for the moment where it went wrong, trying to find the thing that, if you could just understand it fully, would finally make you feel okay? Does your body go into alert mode when he doesn't text back as quickly as usual? Or when his tone changes slightly, when he gets quiet? Or do you oscillate between feeling completely uncertain about the relationship and completely terrified? Sometimes within the same hour. Maybe you read everything about anxious attachment. You know your type, you know his type, you understand the dynamic intellectually, and it is still happening. Or maybe you tried the advice, the feminine energy coaching, the be like a black cat or let him chase you. You performed confidence, and for a while it worked until it didn't. Until something happened and the real version of you came out. Urgent, intense, needing to know. Until something happened and the real version of you came out. Urgent, intense, needing to know. And then you felt ashamed, like you've undone everything. If this is you, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not too much. You are not broken. You are carrying something that has not yet found its resolution. And that's what we're going to work on today. And I want to be clear about where these works come from. Everything I'm sharing today is rooted in family constellation, somatic work, and 7 years of one-on-one sessions with women carrying this exact pattern. What I found constantly is that anxious attachment is not a personality trait. It's not something you were born with. And it is not something you need to manage for the rest of your life through a strategy or performance. It's a pattern, a deep, layered pattern that is operating on multiple levels simultaneously. In your body, in your emotional identity, and in your lineage. And when you work at the root, all 3 levels at once, something actually shifts. not as a concept, but in your body, in your relationships, and in the way you feel when he goes quiet. So here's our session today. First, we're going to name what doesn't work, the two approaches that feel like healing but keep you circling, then the three levels where the real work happens: somatic, emotional, and ancestral. And we will close with a written practice, paper and pen, that is going to show you something about your own pattern that you may have never seen this clearly before. So let's begin. Before the framework, I want to name what I see women try most often, because most of you have already tried something and you're here because it isn't moving. The first thing people try to do is to understand. They analyze the relationship, they read about attachment styles, they try to identify the dynamic: anxious, avoidant, pursuer, distancer. They take quizzes, they send their partner articles, they build a whole map in their mind of exactly what is happening and why. And here's the problem with that, and I say this with complete love. When you are inside a relationship with a lot of emotional charge, you cannot see your own blind spots. You cannot see the invisible loyalties you're carrying, the places where you are projecting onto him a story that belongs to someone else entirely. Because a relationship's like a dance. When you are in the middle of the dance floor, when your nervous system is activated, when your attachment pattern is running, you cannot see the choreography. You can only feel the steps. So more analysis doesn't create clarity. It creates smoke. The second thing people try, and this is one I see everywhere in the feminine energy coaching space, is performance. You try to act confident. You practice the energy of the black cat. You let him chase you. You play it cool. You respond slower. You perform the version of yourself that doesn't need reassurance. And it works for a while, because performance can be magnetic in the short term until something triggers your actual nervous system. A blue tick that doesn't get answered, a plan that gets changed, a tone that sounds slightly different, and everything that was being held under the surface comes out. And it is not gentle, it is explosive, because it was suppressed and pressure builds. So performance suppresses the wound, it doesn't heal it. And then there's the third approach, the most common and most costly: expecting him to make you feel secure, needing him to answer every question, to give enough reassurance, to be consistent enough, to show up in exactly the right ways so that the anxiety finally quits. And I want to explain something that I explain in sessions, and that changes things every time. There is no chemistry between parent energy and child energy. So when you place yourself in a relationship as someone who needs to be regulated by the other person, when you need him to act like a father or a mother, making you feel safe and held and certain, You are no longer available in the relationship as a partner, as a lover, as an equal. And the other person feels that. It's not conscious, but they feel it. The attraction shifts and the dynamic changes. Because what was a relationship between two adults becomes something else. And the chemistry that existed when you were both in the full energy begins to decline. And this is not a judgment. This is the mechanics of how polarized attraction works. You cannot be both child and lover simultaneously. And when anxious attachment asks the partner to be the parent, the relationship suffers. Not because of bad intention, but because of the misalignment of the roles. So, if it is not analysis, if it is not performance, and not trying to get him to regulate you, how does this actually resolve? In my work, I don't look at anxious attachment as a behavior problem. I look at it as a pattern operating in multiple levels at the same time. And the only way to work at the root, the actual root, is to stop projecting outward on the relationship and bring everything back to yourself. Anxious attachment stays alive because you keep trying to solve outside what is happening inside. And when you do that, when you bring it back, the projection, you begin to work at 3 levels. And within the soul method, this is exactly how we approach it: somatic, emotional, ancestral. So the first level is the body. Because before you think a single thought about a relationship, before you even consciously register that something is off, your body has already entered alert mode. Anxious attachment is not a mental state. It's a psychological event. It's a shower of neurotransmitters that put your system into survival mode. Cortisol, adrenaline, urgency, your heart rate changes, your chest tightens, your thoughts accelerate. And in that state, there is no logic that works. There is no rational conversation that lands. There is no decision that is made from your actual values because your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that makes considered adult choices, has gone offline. The survival brain is running the show. So the first work is not understanding, it's regulation. And this means learning to observe your own body, especially learning to see what triggers the alert, because the triggers are not random. They are precise and they are showing you something. Maybe it's silence, maybe it's a change in his energy, maybe it's when he doesn't acknowledge something important to you. Maybe it's a particular tone of voice that takes you straight back to being 8 years old without even knowing why. These situations are appearing in the relationship for a reason. Not to destroy you, to show you what still needs to be met, what still needs to be integrated. The relationship is not causing the wound, it's revealing it. And the work is to be there with yourself when the alert comes. Not to run to him for relief, not to perform calm while suppressing the panic, but to actually stay with your nervous system, breathing, moving, being present with what is happening inside, and to teach your body through repetition that you are safe, even in the uncertainty, even without the answer, even when he doesn't respond the way that you need. I want to share something from a session. A client came to me in a state I know well. She had been with her partner for 2 years. But every external measure, the relationship was good. He was kind, consistent, present. But when he went quiet, when he had a hard day and retreated into himself, she would spiral. She would send 3 messages where one was enough. She would interpret his silence as evidence something was off. And then she would feel ashamed of her own reaction and try to pull back, to perform distance, to overcorrect. And then in the session, when we worked with the body, not the story about him, but the body, what we found was that the moment he went quiet, her chest would constrict, literally a physical closing. And when we traced that sensation, when we stay with it instead of running from it, what emerged was a memory of her father, a man who was physically present but emotionally unavailable, who would go silent when he was stressed, and whose silence to a child who depended on him felt like disappearance. So her partner's quiet was not her father's silence, but her body didn't know the difference. It was responding to the same signal, the same alert from 30 years ago. When she learned to be with that sensation in her own body, to breathe through it, to stay with herself instead of immediately reaching for him to make it stop, the urgency began to soften. Not immediately, over time, but the trajectory changed. Because security doesn't begin in the relationship. It begins in your capacity to stay with yourself when everything in you wants to run. So this is the first level. Teaching your body that you are there. That you don't abandon yourself in the activation. That you can feel afraid and still stay present. And that the alert is information, not an emergency. The second level is emotional maturity. And I want to be careful here because I know that phrase can sound like criticism, and it is not. It is truly an invitation. Being emotionally mature is not about not feeling, not needing, or performing independence or pretending you don't want closeness. Emotional maturity is being able to take responsibility for your own emotional state. while still being fully in the relationship. It's understanding that every relationship carries risk. Every single one. You can be loved, you can be rejected, you can be surprised, you can be hurt. And there is no level of control, no perfect strategy, no amount of understanding that eliminates that risk completely. So you can say to yourself, I don't trust that he will never hurt me, but I trust that I know what to do if he does. That is the shift. That is the foundation that makes it possible to be in a relationship without needing the relationship to be your anchor. Because here's what anxious attachment is asking for. And it's asking for it with genuine love and need. It's asking the partner to carry the weight of your inner insecurity, to be consistent enough, present enough, reassuring enough that the anxious part finally quiets. But that weight cannot belong to him. Not because he's not willing, but because it isn't his to carry. The inner security you're looking for has to come from inside of you. I'm going to say this again. The inner security you're looking for has to come from inside of you. From trusting yourself, from knowing that if the relationship ends, you will survive it, you will grieve it, and you will be okay. The adult self, the emotional, mature self, doesn't enter a relationship looking for a parent to take care of it. She enters knowing that love is a choice and she is making it with open eyes. And she cannot control the outcome. But her security comes from her capacity to handle whatever comes, not from guarantees that nothing difficult will happen. And this is something I talk in sessions and I watch it shift something every time. A client once said to me, but Samira, I can just not need reassurance. I'm wired this way. And I said, I know, but I'm not asking you to stop needing it. I'm asking you to notice who you're looking for it from. Because the truth is, we all need reassurance. Reassurance is human. What creates the problem is when the entire supply of reassurance has to come from one person. When his presence or absence determines whether you feel safe or not. And that's not intimacy, that's dependency. And it is exhausting for both of you. So, emotional maturity doesn't mean becoming self-sufficient in a cold way. It means building your own inner ground firm enough that you can be moved by the relationship, genuinely open, without being capsized by it. So healing anxious attachment at the root, it's not about becoming less intense. It's becoming secure enough to not abandon yourself inside of the relationship. When you release him from the role of your emotional regulator and you step into that role yourself, something else happens to you. The dynamic shifts because suddenly you are showing up as a partner, an equal. Someone who is choosing the relationship from a full place, not depleted one. And that shift in the field is what changes the chemistry. Now we arrive at the third level. And this is the one I almost never hear anyone in this space talk about: the ancestral layer. Here's what I want you to consider: the fear of abandonment that you feel in your relationship, the fear that he will leave, that he doesn't really love you, that something will go wrong. How old is that fear? Because it almost certainly didn't begin with this relationship. It may not even have begun with you. I talk about the morphogenetic field, and it is this field where we are all connected through our DNA and through invisible threads of belonging to the emotional experiences of people who came before us: our parents, our grandparents, the woman in our lineage whose histories were never fully integrated. And here's what I want you to understand about that connection. You don't inherit the scenario, you inherit the emotional state. So your grandmother may have lived in a completely different world, different circumstances, culture, and constraints. But if she carried a terror of being abandoned, if she stayed in a marriage that didn't serve her because living felt too dangerous, that emotional imprint doesn't disappear with her. It passes forward, not as a memory, but as a body state, as a frequency that your nervous system recognizes as familiar. And now think about this. How many women in your family were abandoned? How many were betrayed? How many stayed in love that wasn't safe because they didn't believe they had a better option? How many learned generation after generation that love hurts? That love is something you survive, not something you flourished in. You may be reacting to that accumulation, not to him, but to generations of unintegrated grief. And I also want to say this because it matters. We live in a time when the collective field around women and love carries significant weight. Phrases like "no man is worth it," "men always leave," or "women always suffer in love." These don't begin in individual cynicism. They come from accumulated pain, from stories repeated across generations, from real wounds that were never given space to heal. And when those collective fields are strong, they shape what we believe is possible, what we expect, and even what our nervous system prepares for before anything has even happened. Because trauma at its root is a frozen frame, a moment where the nervous system couldn't fully process what happened, so it stayed there, suspended, recurring. And what is not processed is repeated until it finds the space to be fully integrated. So the repetition you see in your relationship is not bad luck. It is not a reflection of your worth. It's your field trying to finally complete something that began long before you were born. I remember a client came to me. She was 3 years into a relationship that was genuinely healthy. Her partner was consistent, he communicated, he was showing up, but she was terrified. Every day, a low hum of, this is going to end, he's about to leave at any moment, something bad will happen. And when we went into the lineage, into the field, when she actually looked at the emotional history of the woman in her family, what emerged was striking. Her great-grandmother had been widowed young. Her grandmother had stayed in a marriage where her husband was absent for years. Her mother had been left when my client was 3 years old. So you see, 3 generations of women who had learned that the people they love left. And my client, who had never consciously known most of these stories, was carrying that emotional conclusion in her body, not as a thought, as a certainty. A body certainty that love ends in loss. When she saw that, when she understood that she was reacting to her present relationship, but to a cumulative emotional inheritance, something changed. Not because the fear disappeared immediately, but because she stopped treating it as an evidence about her partner. And she began treating it as information about her lineage. And that is the difference between being inside the pattern and being able to see it. And I want you to focus that you are not repeating the history of your ancestors. You may be repeating the emotional scenario. And the most important thing I want to say about this level is not the past. It's about what becomes possible when you see it clearly. You have more autonomy than any woman in your lineage. More freedom, more choice. The field has shifted generation by generation. It has expanded. But that autonomy only becomes available to you when the pain has been integrated. When the frozen frames thaws, when you stop recreating the emotional scenario in a new context with a new person and begin to consciously to choose differently. You don't need to carry emotionally what began before you. You can be the woman who breaks the cycle, not by force, but by integration. I want to pause here what we just explored, the body, the emotional maturity, the ancestor layer. These are 3 dimensions of the same wound. And understanding them is not the same as moving through them. Because this work, the real root work, is specific. Your body's triggers are specific. Your emotional story is specific. Your lineage is yours. And finding the exact root and releasing it, it's what we do in the soul session. One session, just you and me, we go into your field, your body, your pattern, the invisible loyalties you are carrying, and we work somatically, systemically, and energetically. If something today opened the door, the application is in the show notes. For today's practice, I'm going to give you something to do with paper and paint. No meditation, no visualization, something more active. Something that is going to show you your own pattern in a way that inside alone you could not see it. You need a few minutes of quiet and something to write with. If you're driving, save this for later. It's worth doing properly. You're going to create 2 columns on a page. The first column is your present. This is where you will write down your triggers, fears, insecurities of a relationship. But this is important. Do not describe the situation. Describe the feeling or the repetition. Not when he doesn't text back, but the fear of being abandoned. The anxiety when he withdraws. The sense that I'm not good enough. The urgency to know where I stand. So focus on the emotional state, not the external event. And take your time with this column and be honest. Because these are the places where your nervous system activates. And they are not random, they are precise. Now, in the second column, go back in time to the woman in your lineage. Think about your mother, your grandmother, the stories you heard, the ones that you were told and the ones that were carried in silence, the situations you witnessed when you were a kid. Think about how love looked in your family, whether it was safe or if it lasted, whether the women in your line were held or whether they held everything alone. And ask yourself, not intellectually, but in your body, how do I think they felt? Not what happened to them, how did they felt? And write that down. Even if you don't know for certain, allow yourself to tap into your intuition. Fear, loneliness, the sense that love always comes at a cost, the quiet resignation of someone who stopped expecting to be met. So you write what comes. Now look at both columns and see what repeats. Because when you see the pattern, when you see the emotional state in your present relationship has roots that stretch back through the woman who came before you, something changes. Not because you resolve it, but because you step outside it long enough to see it. And that seeing, that moment of clarity is the beginning of real integration. If you want to keep going with this kind of work, practices that help you integrate at the body level, not just the mind, the Becoming You Activation Workbook is for you. 5 days of exercises, free. and you can download it in the show notes. So let's bring this home. 3 levels, 3 roots, and 3 openings. We talked about the body, how anxious attachment is not a thought pattern, is living in your body because it learned at some point the absence of the other meant danger. And the work here is not stop feeling it, but to be there for yourself when it activated, to stay with yourself, to breathe in, so you can teach your nervous system through repetition that you are safe, even when there is uncertainty. The next level is emotional maturity, because security cannot come from him. Not because he is incapable of giving it, but because that is not where it lives. The adult self enters a relationship knowing that love carries risk, that trust is a decision, not guarantee. And the real security comes from trusting your own capacity to handle whatever comes, not from hoping that nothing difficult will happen. And when you release him from the role of being your emotional regulator, you free both of you. And the relationship can thrive because the chemistry and the polarity is back on. The next level, the ancestral pattern, is what you feel in your relationship may not have begun with you. So the fear of abandonment, the terror of being left, this may be emotional inheritances passed down through a lineage of women who never had the tools or the freedom to integrate their own wounds. And you're not repeating the story, you are repeating the emotional scenario. And the moment you see that distinction, the moment you can look at your fear and say, I know where you come from, and you're not mine to carry forever, integration becomes possible. So, before this session, you spend your energy analyzing him, managing yourself, and hoping he will finally give you enough to feel okay. And no matter how much he gives, it's never quite enough, because the wound isn't in him. And after this session, you have a direction. You know the work is internal. You understand the 3 levels. And you have a precise practice to begin seeing your own pattern clearly. And you know that anxiety doesn't disappear overnight, but you're no longer inside it without light. So do the 2-column exercise this week. And next time your body activates, the next time he goes quiet or something feels uncertain, instead of reaching outward, pause, take 1 breath and ask yourself, what is your body feeling right now? Not what is he doing, but what am I feeling? That one shift from outward to inward is where the work begins. One last thing before I go. If today touched something that feels older than this relationship, if what came up in the 2 columns showed you a root that is deeper than any strategy can reach, I want to invite you into the soul session. This is not a consultation or coaching. It's a one-on-one intuitive therapy session where we go into your field and we do the work that actually move things. Somatic, systemic, and energetic. at your own pace and in a space of complete safety. Check the link in the show notes if you feel the yes. And to stay connected between the sessions, download the Becoming You Activation Workbook. These are 5 days of practice completely free. Subscribe to the newsletter. That's where I share my own process week by week, more intimately than anywhere else, and you can reply directly. Share this episode with one woman who needs to hear it, and you probably know exactly who she is. And if this podcast has been part of your healing, a review means so much. It's how more women find their way here. All links are in the description. Before I go, I want to leave you with something. The anxious attachment you've been carrying, it is not a flaw in you. It is not an evidence that you love too much, or you need too much, or you feel too deeply. It is a pattern that formed to protect you, using the tools that were available at that time. And you, right now, doing the work, are building new tools so you can sustain a new level. And you don't need to survive love anymore. You can learn to feel safe inside of it. Remember, a woman who changes her life is healing her whole lineage. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing this work. I see you in the next session. Sending you so much love. If you made it to the end of this episode, it means you're truly committed to healing your heart and living in true alignment. I see you, and I'm so proud of you. Make sure to subscribe to the Soul Session so you never miss our weekly time together. And if you enjoy what you heard, please leave a review and share your biggest takeaway. I'd love to hear from you. For exclusive content straight to your inbox, subscribe to my weekly newsletter. And if you're ready to quantum leap into your next level, book a one-on-one session with me. You'll find all links in the description. Thank you for being here. Sending you so much love. Until next time.